Your baby is lying on your chest, 3 weeks old, belly full, when the hiccups start. Rhythmic, small, completely indifferent to your concern. You try shifting their position. You try the pacifier. You offer a little more milk. You sit there in the dim room wondering whether you fed them too fast, or too slow, or in the wrong position, or whether something is bothering their stomach. The baby hiccups again and regards you with the particular calm of someone who has no idea what a parenting forum is. Almost every parent has been in this exact moment, and almost every parent gets the same answer when they look it up. Normal. Don't worry, it passes. That answer is not wrong, it is just missing the part that matters most. Because in 2019, a team of neuroscientists at University College London published something that reframes what your baby was doing in that moment on your chest. The hiccups were not a malfunction. They were not just a side effect of feeding. They were doing something to your baby's brain that nothing else in those early weeks does in quite the same way. Something that needs to happen, and can only happen this way. If this is already making you see your baby differently, hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps. And drop a comment telling me how old your little one is right now. I love knowing who I'm talking to. The diaphragm is a large dome-shaped muscle that sits beneath the lungs. Every breath you have ever taken was powered by it. In adults, the brain runs diaphragm control on something close to autopilot. No conscious effort required, no special signal needed, just continuous regulation you never think about. In a newborn, that autopilot has not been installed yet. The wiring between the brain and the diaphragm is still being laid in those first weeks and months of life. The phrenic nerve, which carries the brain's instructions down to the diaphragm, is still maturing. The circuits that will eventually allow your child to breathe steadily, speak clearly, and one day hold their breath underwater, those circuits are still forming, and hiccups are part of how they form. A newborn can hiccup for up to 15 minutes at a stretch. They can hiccup dozens of times a day. Fetuses hiccup in the womb, sometimes for weeks before birth, and researchers who study fetal movement have noted that hiccuping is one of the most frequently observed activities a fetus performs in the third trimester. For a long time, no one knew exactly why. The reflex itself is ancient, present in amphibians, in fish, in species that predate the development of lungs. But why it persists with such intensity and frequency in human newborns was not well understood until the UCL study gave researchers a clearer picture of what the hiccuping brain was actually doing. What the researchers found was this. Every time a baby hiccuped, it produced a large, distinct electrical wave in the brain's cortex, not a random flicker of neural noise. A specific, measurable, repeating signal. The kind of signal the brain uses to map the body, to learn where it begins and ends, to figure out which muscles are doing what, to build the internal body map that underpins every physical skill the child will ever develop. And the signal produced by a hiccup was, in the words of the research team, strikingly large compared to other sensory signals in the newborn period. The hiccup contracts the diaphragm. The brain receives the signal from that contraction. The brain registers it, processes it, and uses it to refine its model of how breathing works. The more this cycle repeats, the more precise that model becomes. Eventually, the brain no longer needs the hiccup to generate the information it needs. The circuit is built, the autopilot comes online, and the hiccups slow down on their own. This is the developmental window that matters here. The first 3 months of life, sometimes called the fourth trimester, when the majority of this diaphragmatic wiring happens. Babies in this window hiccup the most, for the longest stretches, and with the least apparent distress, because the hiccup is doing exactly what it is supposed to do, and the baby's nervous system is not registering it as a problem. The intensity of the hiccuping during this window is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It is a sign that the brain is in an active phase of respiratory development. By the time most babies are 4 to 6 months old, the hiccup frequency drops considerably. The phrenic nerve has matured enough that the brain can regulate the diaphragm more directly. The neural training has served its purpose. The circuit is built. Most parents do not know any of this. And because they do not know it, they respond to the hiccups based on what they do know, which usually leads them somewhere quite different from the truth. The most common explanation parents reach for is feeding related. The baby ate too fast. The baby swallowed air. The bottle nipple was the wrong size. The latch was too shallow. Something about the feeding produced the hiccups, and the solution is to change something about the feeding. This explanation is understandable. Hiccups often do happen in the window after a feeding. Swallowing air can irritate the diaphragm and trigger the reflex. There is a real connection between eating and hiccuping in infants, just not the one most parents are focused on. The problem is where this explanation leads. Parents who believe hiccups are caused by feeding errors spend the early weeks adjusting positions, switching bottles, changing feeding schedules, burping for longer stretches after every meal. They feel low-level anxiety each time the hiccups start, a sense that something they did caused this, and something they need to change should stop it. Some parents eliminate foods from their diet while breastfeeding, convinced that what they are eating is somehow reaching the baby and producing the reflex. Some consult their pediatrician multiple times in a single month, and the baby, lying there in the middle of all this intervention, hiccuping away with no sign of distress, is doing exactly what their brain needs them to do. There is something else that gets layered on top of the feeding explanation, a quieter worry that lives underneath the practical concern. Many parents, especially in the first weeks, register the hiccups as a sign of discomfort. The baby must be feeling this. The baby must want them to stop. So every hiccup becomes a call to action. The patting intensifies, the holding position changes, the pacifier comes out again. The parent is working hard to fix something, and the baby keeps hiccuping, and the parent wonders what they are doing wrong. They are not doing anything wrong. The hiccups are not a message that the baby is uncomfortable. They are not a signal that a feeding went badly. For the vast majority of healthy newborns, they are the sound of a brain doing its job. The baby is not asking you to fix anything. The baby's nervous system is running a process that cannot be rushed, cannot be interrupted by a different bottle brand, and does not need to be corrected, because it was never a mistake. What the baby actually needs in that moment, and what the science makes clear, is something much simpler and far less stressful than anything most parents are currently doing about it. The researchers who conducted the 2019 UCL study used EEG, electroencephalography, to measure the brain activity of newborns in real time as they experienced various sensory events, sounds, touches, movements, and then hiccups. What distinguished the hiccup from every other signal was the size and consistency of the cortical response. Lead researcher Lorenzo Face and his team described the pattern as a high-amplitude oscillation, a brain response so pronounced that it stood apart from the baseline noise in a way that other reflexes did not. The brain was not passively registering the hiccup the way it registers background sound. It was actively processing it, treating it as information worth organizing around. The concept at work here is called sensoromotor integration. The brain needs to learn the relationship between a movement it produces and the sensation that movement generates. Every time the diaphragm contracts during a hiccup, the brain receives proprioceptive feedback, a signal from the body that says, "That muscle moved. This is what it felt like." Over thousands of repetitions across the newborn period, the brain builds a precise internal map of diaphragm function. That map becomes the foundation for voluntary breathing control, and eventually for the breath support that underlies speech. A child who cannot regulate their breath cannot regulate their voice. The hiccup, in this context, is the earliest rehearsal for language. The UCL team noted something else worth sitting with. In premature babies, the hiccup responses were even larger and more frequent than in full-term newborns. Babies born early have more respiratory development left to complete outside the womb, and their brains appear to compensate, generating more hiccup activity, not less, as if the system is aware of the work still ahead. The babies who seem most overwhelmed by hiccups are often the ones whose brains are working hardest. If you're finding this helpful, please subscribe and turn on notifications. I upload new videos every week, and I'd hate for you to miss one. Your support is what makes this channel possible, and it genuinely means the world to me. With that foundation in place, the individual behaviors that used to look like problems begin to look completely different. The first one is hiccups that arrive immediately after feeding. Most parents read this as confirmation that the feeding caused the hiccups. Too fast, too much air. And while air swallowing can contribute to diaphragm irritation, the timing here is not accidental for a different reason. Feeding requires sustained diaphragm coordination. The baby is breathing and swallowing in an alternating rhythm for the entire duration of a feed. The diaphragm has just done a significant amount of work. The brain seizes the window. The hiccups that follow a feeding are often the brain capitalizing on a moment when the diaphragm is already active and the proprioceptive feedback channel is open. Changing the feeding to prevent these hiccups is in most cases trying to close a door the brain is deliberately walking through. The second behavior is hiccups during sleep. Parents find this one particularly unsettling because the baby looks so peaceful, and then the hiccups start, and the parent waits anxiously for the baby to wake up. Most sleeping babies do not wake from hiccups. They continue sleeping through them, sometimes twitching slightly, sometimes not registering them at all, because the sleeping brain is still running the circuit. The hiccup reflex does not require wakefulness. It is driven by a part of the nervous system that operates below consciousness, and the sensor-motor processing that follows continues regardless of whether the baby is awake or asleep. The parent who rushes to intervene is often the one most likely to actually wake the baby. The third behavior, and the one that tends to concern parents the most, is a hiccup episode that stretches on for 10, 12, 15 minutes without stopping. This duration feels like something that should be fixed. It feels like it must be uncomfortable, or that it represents some kind of escalating problem. The baby who is hiccuping for 15 minutes straight, lying there with their eyes open, looking around the room with apparent interest in the ceiling fan, is not suffering. Their nervous system is running a training session. The length of the episode reflects the depth of the developmental work being done in that window, not the severity of a problem. One more behavior worth naming. When a baby holds eye contact with you mid-hiccup, eyes steady, face calm, no sign of distress, they are not asking you to intervene. They are sharing the moment. The parent who meets that gaze, stays close, and says something soft without reaching for a solution is doing exactly what the baby's nervous system needs. Presence, not a fix. That distinction matters more than any bottle angle or burping technique you have tried. Go back to that moment on your chest. 3 weeks old, the room dim, the hiccups starting again. You were trying to fix something. Your baby was never broken. That rhythmic hic against your sternum was the sound of a new brain doing one of the most complex jobs it will ever attempt. Learning to run a body from the inside, one signal at a time, and you were already doing the most useful thing possible. You were there, warm, still, holding them through the whole thing. The phrenic nerve finishes much of its maturation by around 6 months. The long dramatic episodes of early infancy give way to the occasional brief hiccup of later childhood, and eventually the reflex settles into something your child barely notices. But the work done during those early weeks does not disappear. Researchers studying respiratory development have connected the quality of early sensoromotor integration to later outcomes in breathing efficiency and speech fluency. The baby who hiccuped through the 4th trimester and was held through it, without unnecessary disruption, developed those circuits in the most natural environment possible. You do not need to have done this perfectly. Most parents spend weeks in the feeding adjustment spiral before anyone tells them otherwise. The circuits your baby needed were building the whole time, through every burping session that changed nothing, through every position shift that made no difference. The hiccups kept working regardless. The development was happening whether or not you understood it. There is something worth pausing on in the moment when a parent stops trying to fix the hiccups and just stays. The baby hiccups. The parent exhales. The room settles. Nothing has changed, and yet the whole quality of it is different, because the parent has stopped treating their child's biology as a problem to solve and started watching it work. That shift, from anxious intervention to steady, patient witnessing, is one of the quieter things the early months can teach you. Your baby's body knows exactly what it is doing. Your job, in more moments than anyone tells you, is to trust that and stay close. You were already doing it right. Thank you so much for being here until the very end. It means everything. If this video changed how you see your baby even a little, please share it with another parent who needs to hear it. Check out the videos on your screen now. I think you'll love them. And subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you in the next one.